President of the Board of Directors of Lodi Unified School District Capital Facility Corporation, a nonprofit corporation organized for public purpose, corporation pursuant to bylaws of the corporation in section 54(9)56 of the California Code, hereby calls and gives notice to this meeting. The meeting will be conducted today, of course, and it's here. And are any comments from the board? Any comments from the public? And I understand this is an action item. So we have action, it's the resolution CSC 2015-01 to authorize signature of grant deed related to Alaska Public Schools refunding the 2005 certificate of participation. Mr. Hearn, anything?
Only that this will allow us to retire those certificates of participation, which will also then take that out of our debt service and actually will increase our ratings.
Okay, very good. Thank you, sir. Wish of the board.
Mr. Nutt.
Mr. Neely.
Move to approve. Second.
Been moved by Mr. Neely, second by Mr. Talkin to approve this action item CFC 2015-1. Is it on computer? Students do not vote on this. Okay? We have a board for it.
And that's right. This one.
That come up yet? Okay, we got it.
Good.
This task is being collected. Motion carries 7-0. I declare this meeting adjourned. Don't leave yet. We haven't started. Roll call. We have student representatives, Anna from Bear Creek and Julia from Tokay High School. Welcome.
Mr. Nava, members of the board, the agenda was posted for 7:15, so we do need to wait till 7:15.
We do need to wait. Oh, we have some free time. All right, open your books. Read Act 13. I need a report in 5 minutes.
That's hard to read. Surprised you didn't make a drop and give you 20.
Right, there you go, that comes next. We'll go before.
All right. I attempted that.
You can now.
Just started.
Yeah, no, that's fine. But did that make sense?
So far, we're not doing really well. Closed session. Yeah. Working that mouse over yours.
Look what you did. This is huge. For every.
Yes, 5 minutes.
We'll find out. Yeah. Oh. Okay, well, be there. Yeah. Oh. So they 2016 is yeah. On a mission, It was from and they were unsuccessful. First successful. It's so different. I mean, it's. That's funny, you know, my father is always here. So when it first showed up, it was on. Just a partner. See what they were building. The boy walked up. He didn't have to feed it up. Hey, they are hungry. They're going to eat it no matter what. Number of the girls. Yeah. Or young kids. Boy or girl. They want to teenage boys. If you that's my goal. Change that. That's one of my goals. Yeah. Just one minute.
Meeting will please come to order. We're reconvening to a regular meeting. Roll call shows that all board members are present. We have school representative Hannah from Prairie Creek High School and Julia from Tokay High School. Would you please rise for the pledge? Salute. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We have one report from closed session on placement of non-public school students. Mr. Neely motion, Mr. Talker. Placement of 2015-16 non-public school students number 89, 90, 91 by the following vote of 7-0. That concludes our closed session report. Now I understand we have a recognition. Is this correct?
Yes.
That's
Right, guys, Mr. Neely.
Thank you, Mr. Nava. I'm sorry, Todd, you changing over the place.
Now we're where we need to be.
We're now where we need to be. Okay,
I'll keep you straight, sir.
I appreciate that. Can you join me over here?
I will.
Please.
I will.
You know, this is kind of a sad time, and it's a happy time and all that. I get to recognize one of my good friends, but also going to be saying goodbye to my right-hand guy over here on the podium. Let me tell you, Joe Nava is one impressive individual. I always knew that, even before I got on the board. When I sat out here, you sat up there, and we had little conversations back and forth. Sometimes they weren't so happy. But when I got on the board, I found out just what an outstanding, honorable, and hardworking individual Joe Nava is. For those of you who don't know it, he's been in public education for almost 50 years. 41 years as a classroom teacher and coach. And he's been a mentor to so many people. Let me tell you something about Joe Nava and how he is. Joe Nava is one of those board members that reads every bit of the information, the mountainous amount of information that the superintendent gives us to read before everybody goes through every bit of it. And he knows it and finds mistakes. And he's always prepared to discuss it. And when I first got here, you know, we just almost always agreed. But sometimes we'd have a disagreement on something. And it upset me that I was disagreeing with Joe. But then I came to realize even Joe Nava could be wrong, so I was all right. Joe, it's been a tough year. We've been through a lot, and I tell you what, your leadership and your guidance of taking us through this turmoil-filled year has just been incredible. Your patience, the dignity with which you handled that position as board president is an inspiration to us all. And I thank you on behalf of the board and on behalf of the Lodi Unified family for everything you've done for this district. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Two pieces. Oh, two pieces. Yeah, I don't know why. I think it's the superintendent's fault. Okay.
Thank you.
And
Impressive.
you've got the floor.
Okay, thank you, George, for your kind words. My God, I didn't think I was that good, but thank you again. It was very impressive what you talked about me. You have to have a passion for education to do what I've been doing. And I've had that passion since I started teaching when I was 23 years old. And I had like 41 years in education, and I never tired. When I saw my counselor for retirement in my last 3 years, he says, "You're working free." I says, "So I enjoy what I do." And I did work 3 years after I had my counseling session. But it also, the expectations of what you work with is the Board of Education. All these gentlemen and lady are professionals. My gosh, we might, like I said, George says, might disagree here, there, but when we get out of here, we're communicating, talking about the next meeting, talking about the kids, what happens and what's best for kids, what's best for staff, what's best for administration, all the things that are in education. And like I said, since I've been just presiding over these meetings, I have put a little more work on it, and I've enjoyed it tremendously. I had to meet a lot of new people, and it was enjoyable. And like I said, a lot of things happened during the tenure of the presidency this last year. We had raises, we had Common Core continuing, the LCAP, all these things that are happening now. And we have a great staff here in Lodi Unified to take care of the business of kids in our district. I thank you very much. Thank you, George. Thank you, board, for your support. Great. Okay, board organization. Election of officers. I have a nomination.
You're gonna know.
I have a nomination. I nominate Mr. Ron Freitas for president of 2016 president. Any other nominees? Mr. Freitas, you will be our president for 2016.
We need to vote for that.
Yeah, well, oh, I'm sorry. I did, oh, that's right. I did. You were a rookie then. All in favor? You have it on the computer? No, we're not. All opposed? Okay. All right, we have nominations for vice president.
Mr. President,
Mr. Talkin.
I'd like to nominate Ron Heberly.
Ron Heberly. Second. Moved in second, that we have Mr. Ron Heberly as vice president of the board. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Mr. Heberly, you're the vice president of the Board of Education for 2016.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Nava,
Yes, Mr. Talkin.
I would like to nominate Mr. Womack for clerk.
I'll second. That's what I experienced. You got your pen ready? Okay. All in favor of Mr. Womack is closing of 2016?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, Mr. Womack, you are the clerk for 2016. Okay, we'll have a little recess here and change seats, all kinds of things, so be patient with us, please. Thank you.
Well, he's gonna have to sign back in.
What do I say?
Right, so we do have to sign it.
My wife said.
Oh, you went quick here. Water?
That's fine. Thank you, sir.
No matter
Oh, please, go to the other thing. I appreciate this. Yes.
this stuff is very nice to
It's gonna take all the recess to walk back. Yeah. Well, because the vote, we have to log in.
Log on.
Yeah, but there's a different chair you do. Because it says I have chairs.
All right.
This doesn't want to log out.
The world over there shuts down. I shut it down. Shut it down. Monitor don't sleep.
It sounds like a good idea. All those lawyers at 22 hours. Are they regular?
Not quite enough.
Just finished.
They said that the seats were like.
They said did, and then I logged back in. I want to do that.
You gotta do it first with that.
You better move it so I
There's politics, but it's every job.
Oh, and you want me to continue running here?
I would.
There, that's what I got. That's what hey, Todd, don't run away.
But I need a board about 18 by 18.
Yeah.
And I can mount that. So I don't know if you want to permanently mount it. It's got 2 pins in the base plate to attach it to the bench. But yeah, it's good. No, I see. But you got a counter 60 mounts, so there's some set that there.
Yeah.
Oh, you're way out.
Try that one. Try this one.
There.
Y'all hearing?
Did you log out? Wonder if it's, well, I wonder if they did this. Did you log out there? Bonnie, you logged me out, right?
That's how you turn it on.
Since we're just moving into volunteers, do we need to join the meeting?
We got to vote for the calendar.
Can we do a voice vote on the calendar? Leave this, leave that.
As long as it doesn't matter. I believe it's
Can we say vote?
This is a very expensive, highly efficient piece of software.
So you want me to?
funny. Yeah, I read that. That child is in there. Yeah. No, Patrick. Seriously. You know, you can find this when you get home and
In the interest of getting out of here before midnight, let's say we move on to the next agenda item. We have the 2016 calendar of meetings. Board's wishes?
I second.
A motion was moved to approve the 2016 calendar by Womack. Approved by Mr. Nava. Board discussion? Student vote.
Mr. Freitas, would you like to take public comment?
Public comment. No public comment. Student vote. Students approve. Call for a voice vote from the board.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Next agenda item, we have the board subcommittee and appointments. We call for volunteers. Board Audit Review Committee, 3 appointees. Formerly serving were Mr. Heavily, Mr. Talkin, and Mr. Womack.
Mr. President, I would be volunteer to stay on that committee.
Thank you, Mr. Womack.
I would too.
I will too.
Thank you, Mr. Talkin, and thank you, Mr. Evans. So we have 3 appointees for the Board Audit Review Committee. Next committee, City of Lodi 2x2 Committee, 2 appointees. Formerly Mr. Nava and Mr. Womack. Mr. Beverly.
Yeah,
Must be my mistake. I'm sorry, I read the wrong call.
no, you give it from there.
So, volunteers, please, for Lodi 2x2.
I would love to stay on those.
So, Lodi 2x2 committee will be Mr. Heverly and Mr. Neely. City of Stockton 2x2 committee, former board members, former committee members were Mr. Nava and Mr. Womack.
I'd like to stay in it.
Thank you, Mr. Nava.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Womack. City of Stockton Parks and Recreation Committee, 1 appointee.
I'd like to stay with that one too also.
Thank you very much, Mr. Nava. The Energy Conservation Committee, 3 appointees. I will volunteer for that. Any other volunteers? Thank you, Ms. Castle. One more?
Which one? Energy? If you want to be on it, please go ahead.
Girl, you're an energy kind of guy, aren't you?
I'm an energy kind of guy. I have lots of energy, sure.
Thank you, Dr. Compton. Joe Cernan Charter Advisory Committee, 1 appointee, formerly Mr. Heverly.
I will be willing to stay on that.
Thank you very much. Be Mr. Heverly. And San Joaquin County School Board Association, Mr. Healy's chairman's this year. His 3 years of service. Thank you, Mr. Neely. Any volunteers?
Mr. Freitas, I'll
Thank you, Mr. Scott. Thank you all board members for your subcommittee and volunteering for that. CSBA. We have Mr. Womack's term expires in March of 2016. There are as many as 4 positions available for our district.
President, I'll pass on that this time.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Womack. We also have Mr. Heberly and Mr. Neely are delegates, which are remaining delegates through 2017. So any additional candidates for delegate? So now we will proceed with Mr. Heberly and Mr. Neely for the time being. Recognition. Mr. Hearn, we have a recognition for the 2015 California Food for California Kids Innovation Award for Nutrition Services for the Director of the Department.
Yes, thank you, President Freitas.
Thank you.
Members of the board. It's my honor to introduce to you Nancy Rostamelli, our Director of Nutrition Services, and I'd like her to come up. In recognition of what a lot of us have known as California Thursdays, thank you for coming up. She's shy, she said she didn't. But anyway, we have received, or she has received, and her department has received, an honor from the Center for Eco-Literacy, which is California Food for California Kids initiative, provides for resources and inspiration for incorporating fresh, seasonal foods in school meals, preserving the environment, promoting local economies and agriculture, and teaching students where their food comes from. And I think the quote from the director is the best thing to introduce Nancy and what she said. We are privileged to honor the great work of enterprise and entrepreneurial leaders like Nancy Rostamelli, said, I'll probably butcher this name, Zaniba Barlow, Executive Director of the Center for Eco-Literacy. It is important to see how creative, appealing, and engaging California Thursday event can be. And I know that some of you were involved at Tokay when we had our rollout of that, and Nancy was recognized and her department. So Nancy Russell.
Thank you, Mr. Hearn. Dr. Washer and members of the board for acknowledging this award and for your continued support of the initiative as well as our local wellness policy. This initiative has really provided this district with the opportunity to make an impact in the California economy as well as to reach out to our students to provide them with some nutrition education and to teach them where their food comes from and how to make healthy food choices. So thank you for that. And I invite any and all of you into our kitchens to see us cooking. Come join us for breakfast, lunch, or supper any day, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Congratulations.
Mr. President, can I make a comment? I just wanted to say thank you so much for your leadership. I attended the Tokay kickoff of the California Thursdays, and I've also attended when that's going on at elementary schools. And it is so heartening to see, walk into these areas and every child is eating broccoli. So, and it's local, and it's such a great idea. We're the breadbasket of the world, and it couldn't be in a more appropriate district. Thank you so very much for bringing this to us.
Thank you. Next item, we have a public hearing. I declare open the public hearing for the local plan for educator effectiveness and funds. Ms. Kotowski.
Yes, this is just a I have to get this down. It's President Freitas, right? Not President. President Freitas and members of the board. This is a plan with the Budget Act this year. We were given some funds from the federal government, from the state of California in terms of educator effectiveness, and this is our public hearing. Next board meeting will bring the whole plan for approval.
Thank you. Comments from the board?
Yes, I do have I guess a question or a comment. In looking at different professional development categories, part of the board's goals are CTE and STEM, and I don't see any of those on here. And I know we're already doing some professional development in those areas, but I was thinking that, seeing as how it is a board goal, shouldn't that reflect this also?
I included it under the Next Generation Science Standards for CTM, and it's under the professional development pieces where we're sending people to conferences, but if you'd like me to draw that out specifically, I will.
That would be great, because they are two different animals.
Yep.
Okay. And with that, other than that, I'm fine.
Mr. Stevens? For some reason, I can't get to this portion of it here, but when we start talking about teacher professional development, I attended a really interesting seminar down at the School Board Association meeting this past week. And it had it's actually being tried in a couple of different places, and I hope that we can work on it here as well. There's been a government grant for, and it entails teachers getting together and learning groups and setting goals and designing their own professional development, which would then be approved by the site administrator. But it allows teachers to group together in areas where they think that they could get the most benefit out of. And not only are these classes done on site, on campus, but there is a significant amount of it that can be done after hours at home, or when they have the time to do it as well, which would, and then it can be tracked. There's a program called, I think it's Edivate, I believe is what it is. I've got it in my notes and I'll get all that to you. But it's a program that allows you to put together programs from all over the country. There's, thousands and thousands of videos and lessons on there. And the teachers pick out which ones that they want to do and the direction they want to go, and they design their own professional development. And then through Eduvate, you actually track the hours. So they post their hours and all that kind of thing. So everything can be seen. It's really quite an interesting program. I've got quite a bit of information on it. And Dr. Washer, I want to get together with you and Lisa and talk about it. So, as they said, professional development teachers are the key. They made the point. They said they actually used Read 180. They said Read 180 is a great program, but that's exactly what it is. Programs don't teach kids. Teachers teach kids, and that's why we've got to invest in professional development. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Neely. Any other comments? Any comments from the public? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing. Superintendent's report, Dr. Washer.
Thank you, President Freitas, members of the board. We have a full agenda, so I will be brief. Just a couple things to mention. We have started the process to adopt our new English language arts and English language development program for the district. This is the first time that English language arts and English language development are together. It's based on the new framework from the state. We have a committee of teachers reviewing materials, and they will be making a recommendation to you later on this year in the spring. This will be a huge effort for the district, not only in terms of professional development and implementation, but also in purchasing materials. We're looking at K-12, so just something to look forward to, and know that we're going to be bringing you a new program for both ELA and ELD. Also, just a quick reminder about the crab feed for Got Kids coming up January 16th. Captain Bob has assured us that there will be crab, so no worries about that. Tickets are $45 January 16th here in Lodi at the Japanese American Hall. So there will be crab for the Got Kids crab feed. Tickets are available, so get us information if you'd like those tickets. We want to make sure that we have about 200 people there. It'll be a good time. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Dr. Washer.
You can't trust somebody called Captain
Bob.
Who would know more about crab than Captain Bob? Very good. Moving on to action items. Consent agenda day, routine business. Any items wish to be pulled by the board? I will pull items A6, A7, and A8 for abstention. Very good.
Mr. Freitas.
Any items which should be pulled by the public? Seeing none.
Move to approve the remaining agenda.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Neely. Second by Mr. Nava. All in favor of approving consent agenda item A, items A1 through 5 and A9? Say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? None. Motion passes 7-0. Motion as to items A6, A7, and A8.
Mr. Freitas.
Thank you, Mr. Neely.
Those items.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Nava, for your second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. And abstained, aye. So motion passes 6-0 with one abstention. And I guess we also approved item 8, A10 in our general consent. That wasn't removed, or would you like a separate vote on it, Dr. Washer?
So it's consent.
It was in consent. All right. Very good. Thank you. Consent agenda B, student discipline cases.
Mr.
Just
Fredo.
gonna vote on this.
I move we accept the consent agenda B.
Motion by Mr. Nava.
Mr. Freitas.
Yes,
I'm
Mr.
going
Neely.
to ask that student number 15/16-9-28 be pulled for second vote.
So amended motion by Mr. Neely. Do I have a second to the amended motion?
Second.
Second by Mr. Womack. Any board discussion as to the remaining cases? Call for the vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion with the exception of 15/16-9-28 approved.
Mr. Freitas.
Yes, Mr. Neely.
I just want to vote on that one separately. I don't have any comments.
Very good. Is there a second?
Second. I'm not moving to approve it.
Okay.
I'll move to approve.
Thank you, Dr. Talkin.
Second.
So motion made by Dr. Talkin as to student at 28. Second by Mr. Womack. Any board discussion? Public discussion? No. Not already. Call for the vote. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Nay. So motion passes 4-3. Other action items. 2015-16 first interim financial report. Mr. Hearn.
Are you able to bring up the presentation?
Yeah.
Can you bring it up if you go just through the regular agenda?
How about shadow puppets? Would that work, or- I have no problems moving this further down in the calendar until we can get the presentation. I see smoke coming from Todd's keyboard, so. Are you in?
As he brings that up, we of course have Angel Mernon here, our Director of Budgets, and we'll be doing this a little bit differently than we have in the past, as we're going to co-present this this evening. Just to get us started, we're going to be a little more detailed than we have been in the past, mainly because when we originally passed our budget, most of our labor costs that we now have incurred were not considered within that budget. So it has dramatically changed that budget, and even though you have seen those changes over the board meetings with your approval of the change to the adopted budget, we felt it would be a good time to do a summary to where we stand today. All right. On our revenue side, we now are looking at $284,227,140 as our estimated revenue coming into this first interim report. As you can see, the majority, 82%, comes from LCFF sources, which is our main source of revenues. Those revenues are comprised by the state contribution, which equals about 78% of our total revenues in this category, and then our local contribution, which are local property taxes. The other areas of revenue that we see are federal, which is at $19.9 million, or 7% of the budget. Other state revenues, and that includes things such as lottery dollars and so forth, that's 10%. Other local revenues, the dollars that we might get for such as renting out facilities and so forth. And which will now take us to our expenditure side. I'll give it over to Ms. Murray.
The approved expenditures for our budget is currently at $294 million. And we have provided to you the breakout of the object classifications. The 1,000s are our certificated salaries, 2,000s are classified salaries. The 3,000s are the benefits associated with those categories. And the salaries are 80% of our budget currently. The 4,000s are our supplies account, 5,000s are our services, 6,000s are our capital outlay and equipment, and our 7,000s are transfers out. If you go to the next page, we've done something differently for you in this presentation, and we have actually shown you out of the certificated salaries, we've broken it out into the categories of teachers, pupil support, administrative support, and other certificated. Just to give you a little bit more information regarding what certificated salaries consists of. So in this example, in this sample information, the teachers are 84% of certificated salaries at $112 million. Pupil support is at 5%, $6.8 million. Administrative salaries are at 8% at $10.8 million, and the other certificated salaries are 3%. We've done that for the rest of the object code classification. So the 2,000 classification of classified salaries is broken out. Oh, I don't know what happened there. The purple square is our support. I don't know why that's showing that regard. Actually, two of them are because they're not on our printout. Sorry about that. The purple square or triangle is the support classification of classified, and the beige is instructional assistance for classified. The percentage for each of those, instructional is 34% and support is 30%. I apologize for that visual. Can you go back, Todd, please? Sure. I noticed the large blue triangle is also not reflective of the title. It's clerical and technical staff at 28%. I apologize for that. I'm not sure why that happened.
You know it's Tim's fault.
Gotta be.
The benefit, employee benefits of 58 million is broken out. As you can see, the STRS is 25% of the benefit costs at 14 million. PERS is 5.1 million at 9% of our benefits. And then we have Medicare. You can see health and welfare is the largest portion of our benefit costs at 41% of our benefits. And then all the various unemployment and workers' comp categories. Books and supplies at 23 million. 66% of that is for classroom materials and supplies. We have books and reference materials at 26% and equipment at 7%. So this is for equipment that is under $500. I'm sorry, under $5,000 per item. The 5,000 range is for our services. 39% is for consulting and 7% communications, 5% services. Insurance costs is at 7%, operations is at 24%, and lease and repairs at 15%.
Question is the consulting, would that be attorneys?
Yes, attorneys will be included in there, and there may also be contracted services for individuals that are brought in to do teacher trainings.
Okay.
Those would be in that same category. Capital outlay of 4 million. The majority of this category is in equipment replacement. So this is for large ticket dollar items over 5,000 per item. So that's at 67%. And that typically includes things, the majority of that actually, I can probably tell you almost 100% of that is for buses this year. It's not normally that large of a dollar item, but we did have the bus grant that we received, so that's why that number is so large. Equipment, building improvements at 23% and land improvements at 3%.
Yeah, our next slide is, again, the board has asked about STRS and PERS, particularly after our audit report. And so this very busy page is, I hope, going to help explain where we stand. Up on top is the actual numbers, and this projection is based on the FCMAT calculator. And again, FCMAT is the Fiscal Crisis Management Assistance Team, and their calculator is the one commonly used in the state as the determination of what LCFF funding is going to be. You'll notice in this particular model that the gap funding will stop in 18-19. In other words, this model is anticipating that the state will fully fund the gap prior to the 2021 year that originally was anticipated. And again, these are just estimates, and I'll tell you that I believe that in 16-17 we'll probably see a higher number than the $11.2 million, and so that gap may be filled even sooner than the estimated 2019-20. If we go down to the actual graph, you can see that when we compare the STRS and PERS costs in each one of the years, we anticipate having dollars against those increases until we get into 1920 and 2021, where we're going to have a $6.1 million amount that's going to have to be paid as a future debt service to the district. And this, of course, is an ongoing. So when you look at the pie chart, you'll see that with the additional 25.9, almost $26 million that we will receive, $17.6 million, or 68%, a little over 2/3 will go to additional STRs and PERS, only leaving 32% for available funds over that same period of time. So what this is going to cause us again in those next 2 years is we will have to save for that $6 million cost when we receive those gap dollars as that moves forward. Because as we see it now, there will be no additional state funding except for COVID increases other than the gap funding. So basically what that's going to mean is we have to put that $6 million into reserve, and it can be considered a one-time dollar until it will be needed. And in 2019-20, we'll need $3.9 million. And then in 2021, we will need an additional $2.2 million. Any questions on that one?
We don't have PowerPoint on our computers. Is there a chance you can get us this?
Oh, absolutely.
In PDF format?
Right.
And this is interesting, but I'd like a chance to sit
and it can be pulled off of the district's electronic school board page, just as Todd just did.
Right, okay.
But I can also send you a copy of it.
Yeah, that'd be great. Not a hard copy, digital will be fine.
Great.
I'll take part.
That costs extra. Okay, moving on to our ending fund balance. And again, we look at a 3-year, multi-year approach as required by the state with the first interim report. As you can see, in 2015-16, we have dropped substantially. If you look at the $32 million as a beginning fund balance, and then at the ending fund balance to $21 million. That is changing from a 10.8% reserve down to a 7% reserve. In the following years, we will continue to slightly deficit spend, and we will drop even a little further to an 18.9% total reserve of 6%, and a slight gain in 17-18 of going up to about $19.7 million, but still that only is a 6% reserve. As I have said in the past, and as I believe, the district needs to have at least a 10% balance to be healthy. This 6% does put us in line with the current legislation, if in fact all of the stars and the moon aligns and that the governor's rainy day fund actually comes to fruition. There is not a requirement yet of 6%, but as you can see, we are very close to that at this point in time. We didn't have the December enrollment, but I can tell you that it's following its normal trend line and has started to drop slightly. And again, this is because of particularly migration of workers who go back down south to and leave the district. And usually we don't see that return until approximately April of the next year. So we are doing well. Again, if you look at our last particularly 4 years, we've been extremely stable in our enrollment, just with no dramatic changes as we had prior to that. So enrollment does look good. I don't see it's growing in any leaps and bounds, but we are at least stable at this point in time. Just to do an interim summary, because we've done a lot of things over this last year, and the board accomplished a lot of things over this year and over the last year. In this budget, we see a full restoration of salary and benefits. We see settlement to all labor groups through 2015-16. We've seen the largest gap funding to date for 2015-16. Possible larger than expected gap, as I said, in 16-17. Stirs and PERS increase become a concern for us, as we demonstrated. The major LCAP enhancements to 2015-16 include 7-12 class size lowered by 1, doubled the elementary counselors, doubled the elementary music program, increased RRM, or routine restricted maintenance, to meet the 3% requirement. We doubled the textbook double technology. We increased community liaisons by 25% from the prior year, increased contributions to CTE, formerly ROP, state funded, doubled high school as after school program, and we now have it at all 4 comprehensive high schools, 2 additional technology course coaches, increased school safety enhancements, and increased the child welfare and attendance staff. So if we have any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Hearn. Discussion from the board? Yeah, I have a question. When we received our first communication from the county, when we said, okay, here's our budget, and here's our 2 years out projected. At that time, and that's kind of what I was alluding to in the previous meeting, is that it showed a $45 million ending fund balance for this current school year. You had mentioned that basically it's because of this that the 45 is now down to
the beginning fund balance for this year is $32 million.
Right. But what's the projected ending fund balance for this year? That's the number I'm missing out.
$21.4 million.
Okay. That difference, you're saying, is because of these items here?
Yes. The major ones are the labor costs. That was well over $10 million.
If possible, well, let me just say, I would like to have numbers kind of attached to those, and they don't have to be exact. It could be, ballpark numbers, kind of show what the costs of these things are. It's kind of like whenever you get to it, if that would be great. I would really appreciate those numbers also. It just kind of helps add a little bit of, it adds a little bit more information to this page right here, because that's an important page.
So you're asking for dollars assigned to this,
Yes.
this page?
Yes.
Mr. Neal. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Hearn, one of the slides that can we go back up a little bit to the pie chart, right there? That one on the right-hand side that shows additional funding, gap funding. That's all the way through 2021.
That is the total gap funding under the LCFF statute.
Okay, so we're looking at almost $26 million there.
Correct.
All right, but out of that 26 million, we're going to have to spend close to 18 million on STRS contributions. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Now, here's what I'd like to say for the sake of the paper here, is that when we hear all this stuff about Governor Brown increasing funding to education, remember, he gives with one hand and takes away with the other. Let's see. Let's do a quick calculation here. That's 18. What did we say it was? 28. So we're looking at, he's going to take away almost 65% of what he gives us. So.
We have a percentage, it's 68%.
68%, okay. Oh, there you go. Great, thank you. 68%. That's sizable. Now, he's going to make a big deal about saying, I've got all this money to schools. He could have just as easily given us the lesser amount and then picked up the STRS funding on his own, but that's not the case. Anyway, that's the only comment I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Neal. Any other comments from the board? Mr. Womack.
I was actually going to talk about this in my comments from the CSBA conference, but I'll just kind of mention it right now. Is I attended one of the sessions that was about the most important issues facing school districts in the whole state of California. And it said number one was financial uncertainties, because we never know how long it's going to go like this. But secondly, it said STRS and PERS. Statewide, it's a concern. And I'm glad it's on the table. I'm glad we're talking about it. It's in the budget report, because we can't ignore what's coming down the pipe here. It's happened to other areas, and it can happen here. They also suggested that you project out, instead of the 3-year budget, project 5 or 6 years, which is exactly what you did. I appreciate seeing that up there, looking all the way through 2021. So I'll reserve my other comments, except I think we're right on, spot on here in identifying these issues. Thank you.
Ms. Castle?
Todd, could you go back to the summary page, please? There we go, thank you. Just a quick comment, despite the STRS and PERS realities, I just want to make note of the fact that all of those major LCAP enhancements, if you look at them one by one, that's a very large increase of services to our children in many, many, many ways. And if you're traveling around from school to school, you see that. So we have accomplished a lot in that regard. And I just wanted to make sure that we're aware of that. A lot of kids are receiving increased services. That's huge.
Thank you, Ms. Castle. Very well put. Any comments from the public?
Mr. Freitas, no comment from the public or board members. I move that we approve this first interim financial report.
Thank you, Mr. Melvin. Second by Mr. Womack. Student vote. Students approved. Call for the board vote. It'd be a roll vote.
You guys, we're on there, it's there.
No.
Then do a voice vote.
We'll do a voice vote then. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Abstaining? Motion carries 7-0.
Thank you, President Freitas. Again, I want to thank Angel and Maria Fong, our Senior Director and Controller, and Brooke Lynn, who has taken over the responsibility of Joan. Joan is retired, and we have given her a lot to do, including having to get this together and help us with this. So thanks to our great team.
Mr. Hurd, you absolutely have a wonderful team. Mr. Nava here read all 105 pages and the appendices on all of it.
I'm sure he particularly enjoyed the standards and criteria.
He even told me there was an executive summary. So
The
he pointed out
ADA
to
was
me
good also. ADA, 54, page 54.
But your staff does a wonderful job, and you did not disappoint. And thank you, Angel, and thank Brooke, and thank everybody. So, wonderful job. Thank you. Next agenda item is projects for the consideration of funding through the entitlements for the 2015-16 one-time funds for outstanding mandate claims. How enlightening. Dr. Washer, even more enlightening.
Thank you, President Freitas, members of the board. This is a follow-up to the discussion you had at the special board meeting on the topic of one-time funding. I have for you 3 documents that were attached to this item. One was the original document that you saw on November 24th at that special meeting as a point of reference. The second document is an attempt to synthesize what I heard, the discussion from that meeting. And the third item is staff recommendation as requested by board. So those are the 3 documents you have. We have staff here available to answer any questions that you have. And we're asking that you take action tonight. Please do not think that you need to approve one of these documents. You may modify, you may change, you may, do whatever you would like to in terms of approving funds. Those are just presented to help you get the discussion going.
Thank you, Dr. Washington. Any comments from the board?
Mr. President.
Dr. Talbot?
Let me ask you, is it not appropriate, according to rules and regulations of Roberts, that we have a motion on the floor before we have discussion?
Well, it's a good thing you brought that up because I was studying that earlier today.
In line with that, Mr. President.
Yes, Dr. Talbot.
I want to move to approve on staff recommendations, 2015-16 one-time funds expenditures. The first item, board priority and LCAP goal of $1,171,000. District needs and board priorities, 600, 400,000, 1.24, 300,000, 2.5, 2 million, 2 million, 600,000, 500,000, and 350,000.
Continuing on.
That's it.
But not the
That's what my motion is.
I second that motion, sir.
So we have a motion from Dr. Talcott for the first two items of the staff recommendations, omitting the third, and that's been seconded by Mr. Nava. Board discussion.
Mr. Freitas.
Yes, Mr. Hood.
Looking at the three, I also concur that I'm not in favor of expending the money on relocating maintenance and operations at this time. I think that would be something that would come up later in a facilities plan. But right now, that is kind of like a long way off. There's really no comprehensive plan for it. We don't know exactly what's going on with that, other than M&O would move and then there's a vacancy. So what I see as kind of a shortcut to all this is the second document, which is the synthesis of the board special meeting, which really does not show the M&O, but it does show if you don't spend that $2.5 million on relocating M&O, those monies are there. And they're already included in the synthesis of our board meeting and what our discussion was. Because what this paper shows is what we've already talked about. And kind of, it was a conglomeration of our discussion and our goals. And so I'm actually in favor of the synthesis form, because it does take that 2.5 and put it already in earmarked places. And it does give us, CTE and STEM and instructional supplies and our facilities that we've identified as that we've got some problems with. And so it's really falls beautifully into line with what our goals are. So I would encourage our fellow board members to go with this one that I suggested, the synthesis paper, again, because it shows the numbers without the M&O. Because if we vote for the other one, we've got $2.5 million that we've got to do something with. It's already included in the sub.
Mr. Freitas.
Yes, Mr. Neal.
I'd like to offer an amendment to Dr. Talkin's motion. And that is that we take that 2.5 million, we put it down in the bottom section where it says, as funds are available, and allow our administration to go ahead and put that in the various spots that they think it could best be used.
So there's an amendment for Mr. Neely as to moving the $2.5 million to the as funds are available.
Now, Dr. Talkin's motion didn't actually include that 2.5, and I'm saying let's take that 2.5 and just put it down there for the as funds available section and let the administration work out where to spend that.
So there is an amendment to the motion of Dr. Talkin. Is there a second to the amendment?
I have a question first.
Yes.
Could I?
Yes, Ms. Castle.
If this is appropriate, I think it is at this time. I would like to ask Dr. Washer, I would like to hear, as to the recommendation from Dr. Washer and her cabinet to spend the $2.5 million to relocate M&O. If you would give us the justification for that, I'd appreciate hearing what your thoughts were to include that.
Thank you, Ms. Castle. Members of the board, our thinking at this point is that we do think it's important to relocate M&O off of Lodi High campus. It's been something that we've been interested in for a long time, but have not had funds to do so. It's a good expenditure of one-time funds because it is a one-time expenditure. There are some opportunities available at this time that we could pursue. There are a lot of things that Lodi High could use the space for. They are landlocked. This would be the only opportunity for Lodi High to have other programs and services for students. It is somewhat of safety issues now with traffic, students walking and the cars there coming and going. It doesn't seem to make sense to have that facility there. We feel that this is a good time to move it, and then that would leave that open. Now we are working on the facilities master plan as well, so that conversation and project is going. If it is known that that space is going to be available, the timing lines up that those discussions can start happening with the committees who are working on that project. If they know that that space would be available for other things possibly. So we felt that it was a good use of one-time funds, and it seemed to line up with other things that are going on in the district.
And Dr. Washer, the property that is that could be part of this, the previous plant nursery, had the facilities, were they able to talk to the county about the drainage issues, the pollution issue, and so forth with that property?
Ms. Castleman of the boards, I'm going to have Mr. Hearn comment on that also, but they have had permission to do some testing.
Yeah, Ms. Castle, that's where we are right now. We do have permission to go onto the property, do some soil testing and looking at some of the other issues that the board brought up at the time that we were looking at that property.
Okay.
We don't have the specific answers to this point in time.
Could I piggyback on what you're saying here and ask Dr. Washer? You talked about moving M&O out of there. And what is your plan to do with that area? And how are you going to fund that plan?
Fund the vacant space at Lodi High?
Yeah, what's your plans for that and what's your plans for funding that?
Well, the intent was to put that in with the facilities master plan process. That, okay, now there is this space available. So as they're doing their, what's the word, charrettes? Is that the correct word? Looking at land and space and what they want to do with it at the school site, that would become part of the conversation, which, they may be thinking about it now, but it really isn't a reality at this point. So I know that folks at Lodi High have ideas. We've been thinking about other things with career technical education, academy type programs. I know that there are other things with sports, athletics that Lodi High was interested in. So there are various interests out there.
Right.
So to tell you exactly what it would be, I can't. I think that's part of the facility master plan process.
That's where I see the breakdown at, is that we don't really have a plan for that, but we're willing to spend $2.5 million in preparation for it. Now, if we come up with a plan and a way to fund it, then the move for that facility could be incorporated into that plan.
You're absolutely right. And we're not arguing with that at all.
Right.
We felt that timing-wise and opportunity-wise, this could be a good time to do so. To get that done first, and then have that available and have the discussions on the planning while they're doing the facility planning process now.
Totally understand that, but if we didn't have $55 million in needs, I'd absolutely agree with you.
No, we understand that this was the big difference between our recommendation and what you were talking about, so we get that.
And to piggyback on that, I wholeheartedly agree with Mr. Neely is that you know, those kinds of conversations, just because we're in the middle of a facilities master plan, doesn't mean that they shouldn't start thinking about that, because they're dreaming of all kinds of stuff. So this is part of that dream is, hey, there's space there. And in the community, I've heard several groups who are going, yeah, we want that. Well, who's to say who gets that for their needs for the kids? But I would prefer not spending the 2.5 million without knowing what the plan is. And all of that can come out of when we do the facilities master plan, and we're all trying not to say a bond, but a bond. That's where the money is going to come from, and that then hopefully by then that'll all be a piece of the pie, and everybody will go, aha, look at that. And then the move could be a part of it, and there's going to be offsite improvements. There's going to be a lot of money going into that M&O move, not just the property. But then we need to backfill the facility at Lodi High, which is so desperately needed. Yeah, they're landlocked. I totally get that. And I don't think anybody is against the idea of moving M&O. It's more of a timing thing. And for me, the timing is not right for that. We need to wait on it until we do have a plan, just like Mr. Neely said.
Thank you, Mr. Everly.
I have a comment on that, and I know that's landlocked and everything. Lodi is a very old school and doesn't have any room to operate anymore. They're landlocked, they're right there. And I think the opportunity that right now with this one-time fund is to move the M&O and leave that space available. I know that there's several things that the master plan are looking at, and they will come out with some prudent ideas to set that up and expand Lodi High School. And this is the time, because we have the money right now and it's a one-shot deal. We don't know whether we're gonna get it again, you know, when that happens. And then things come up and they know it's needed for this, it's needed for that, and that type of thing. So my opinion is,
Thank you, Mr. Knopf.
Mr. President,
Yes, Dr. Calvin.
the point that I have in doing the first two items and getting that approved was then we could spend time with arguing over the 2.5 million, if you would like, whether or not it would go for M&O move or whether it would go for, as Mr. Heberly suggested, the items down at the bottom. That's why I made the motion just for the first two items, because I thought that was something that would really meet the needs that the board would like to do.
You were the person that suggested that we had the motion before the discussion, right? So,
Yes.
So we should have had the discussion first so we knew what you were doing.
Well, that's what the discussion is after the fact.
So you would not accept Mr. Neely's friendly amendment?
Well, if there's a second and the board,
There's yet to be a second. So you would not accept it so that we could approve the first two items?
first two,
And then the
go
third
to
item.
what Mr. Neely is suggesting or Mr. Heberly is suggesting, either one.
Okay.
At what time do you see it as appropriate for a second motion?
Well, we have one motion on the table, so it seems like we have to call it, well, we still haven't had public comment
We need, yes.
before we can even get to that. So, but we had the amendment that was before us at this point,
It has been seconded.
which has been seconded, and it hasn't been accepted. So it appears the amendment is being withdrawn or fails.
So you have the original motion on
So
the
we still have
floor.
the original moment on the table, we haven't heard public comment on that.
Correct.
So if there's no further comments from the board, we'll open it to public comment. Mr. Johnson.
Mr. Curtis, congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Chair. Your sign still says clerk, but we'll overlook that. Dr. Talkin, you are a paragon of wisdom, sir. I support your idea. Anytime. A couple of questions. Through the chair, if I may,
Yes.
if the $2.5 million is not spent as part of board action tonight, does it have to be spent in this fiscal year? Can it be saved for something like STRS PERS offset in the future?
Very good question. Mr. Hurd?
It couldn't be for STRS and PERS because STRS and PERS would be an ongoing cost. It could be put in and placed by action of the board into reserve.
So we could create a special reserve, general reserve, not
You
specify
could
time.
designate the reserve in any manner or fashion that you would like.
The reason I mention it is because I thought I had heard in the report for the first interim that we did need to save some money for that point where should the governor exceed his projections and fully implement LCFF and all the gap funding, that we would need to have some money saved for that. And I just thought coincidentally, those numbers, two numbers aren't vastly far apart. So maybe that's a possibility. Second question through the chair. If the board elects not to use the 2.5 million for purchase of property for the purposes of relocating M&O, where does the funding to purchase real property at a future date come from? If it doesn't come from a one-time source, does that then get rolled into a bond issue, or do we have some other source of funding that we are eyeballing to make a real property purchase?
Sir?
Projecting the budget out, I don't see any dollars that I could identify that we would be able to do that. Particularly, again, because of the STRS and PERS situation. 2/3 going to PERS and STRS, and then the other third of $8 million. If you look at our LCAP projections and what we would like to do, we are far beyond that $8 million. So there aren't any dollars that I see available, unless the board, of course, directs us otherwise. But if we look at our LCAP, I don't believe those dollars are there.
Mr. Neely?
Yes, sir.
Thank you,
Going
Mr.
on with what you're saying, Mr. Johnson. And that's a good point. The question then becomes, what do we do with the vacant land? Do we have, once M&O is out, where does the money come from to make the improvements on that land necessary to utilize it? I mean, so that's my question. Where does that come from?
The B word, bond.
So why couldn't we do at the same time, use that that would be part of the.
I believe.
It's a bond, all right?
Yeah.
If we ever do get to the point where we get one, we just go ahead and use 2.5 million of that to do it. That way we could use that 2.5 million we have right now to go ahead and make some of these other improvements that you guys have outlined for us.
Mr. Neely, if I could, in response to that, as a taxpayer, I would prefer the district to not encumber debt to purchase property when they can purchase the property outright with existing funds.
But then what do we do? I mean, isn't it like one way or the other? Because if we do one, then we're gonna have to do all this other stuff anyway.
Which is why we're developing a master plan.
Right.
So,
right.
But I'm entering a debate I shouldn't be entering. I just have two questions.
I appreciate it.
All right, we'll go back to public comment. Any other comment from public?
Scott Freitas and Dr. Washer, members of the board. I had a chance to talk with Mitch Slater. He's in charge of M&O, actually by an email. And that property itself right now is listed at $2.5 million. So there's no, obviously it can be negotiated, but you're talking considerable amount of money to improve those facilities that have been vacant for some time. That property's not going anywhere. It's been vacant for at least 10 to 15 years. So I doubt anybody's gonna jump on that thing. It's $2.5 million, so you spend the money for the property, you have no reserves whatsoever to put the M&O there. And you're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars to do something like that, I would imagine. The whole thing about this one-time funding, this money needs to be spent that will directly benefit students. And whether it's directly involved in technology, the STEAM or STEM, or even some improvements at the facility so that they're safer, then that's where it needs to be spent, because that's what it's for. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Scott. Additional public comment. This is Beverly.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
I wasn't planning to speak, but.
Were you talking to me or him? The Vice President?
You too. Actually, one of the things that I know it's not quite on the list, but from all of the teachers that I've talked to have talked about how they love the Chromebooks and how having those one-to-one things have changed and transformed their instruction. And some of them are saying, you know, if I could just have them all of the time. And I know it was on the other list that there didn't seem to be that much interest in accelerating that, but this just seems like such a great time to get that to all of the students really quickly, when you can make a huge difference for students all across the district by putting that in there. I know it's an acceleration, but it was such a good idea to start it. And as teachers are using it, I was talking to, well, it's my son, and he was talking about discovery or something, and he has the principal bought an iPad, and he was able to do his iPad and do the calculations up there on that all the students could see. He could walk around the room and monitor what they were doing, and then he put it on record. And then the students could, if they had trouble, they could go back and see it again. Or let's say they were absent, they could see it again. And just think if all of our students had access to that, how much better it would be for all of them. So I would hope that, you know, I think that I'm on that facilities committee, and I voted for every bond. And if you put that 2.5 million there, well, I'm not sure that we need to spend that much, but if that's what you choose to do, and I would love to, I'll vote yes to move M&O and help build M&O and whatever the new facility is for Lodi High. I'll vote yes for that, but now our kids need this stuff right now. So thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Everly. The board has before it a motion from Dr. Talkin and second by Mr. Nava to approve the first two items of the third document. So that would be in the $1.1 million roughly for the board priorities and LCAP goals, and the district needs and board priorities, omitting the $2.5 million. Ready for a student vote? Students approve. Call for the board vote. Aye. Aye. No. Okay. So all in favor, say aye. Aye. And opposed? No. No. So motion carries 5-2.
Mr. Freitas.
Mr.
Seeing as how we said 2.5 million because that motion passed.
Yes.
On the second page, I guess the middle page, the synthesis of the board special meeting, there's a line under there that were some of the things that we talked about. And it could be the shade structures, the technology plan, and it could also be some of those other things that are on the staff recommendation page. I would love to see us continue to spend down that money for immediate betterment of our facilities and for the betterment of instruction for our children. So I would make a motion that the 2.5 go to those items that have been mentioned and that are listed down below the line on both sheets, and spend that 2.5 million for those remaining items.
Need a little more
Clarification, okay.
You talking specifically on these items?
Yes, the items on the, below the line on the
Right, I
staff.
see that.
Right,
Right.
the staff recommendation, the items below the line continue with spending that, which is what Mr. Neely's friendly amendment was. I wanted to see how the vote went before I made that motion, and I do agree with Mr. Neely that that money should move down. And
So we have a motion proposed by Mr. Everly that the 2.5 million be spent and as available funds for shade structures and additional funds allocated to the bottom lines of the third document. Call for the vote.
Question.
Yes.
Mr. Everett, you're saying that the staff would decide how that money is allocated?
yes,
Okay, Mr. President, I have a question really of Mr. Hearn.
Yes, Dr. Top.
In the items above, some of those items will go out for bid, and they may or may not be at that amount below it, or heaven forbid, above it. If those items exceed the amount of money that is listed here, where does that extra money come from? And that's where I was looking at the 2.5 as having some flexibility to cover any overages in these areas.
which could be lighting, like you're thinking might be more expensive or less expensive. Yeah, well, that's why my motion is as funds are available.
As funds are available. And of course, Dr. Talkin is right that we could be below or above on our estimates. We tried to come in as accurate, but you know, the economy changes, things change, price of things change. So we would have to, I'm sure in this list, we would have to make some adjustments. We did try to build a contingency in particularly the larger items, such as the track and field and so forth. But there's some things that, like with the Tokate lights, that could cause some issues. We'll probably have to do a new EIR and so forth on those things. So it is a budget, and it's our best guess.
In light of that, Mr. Haverly, would you, in your motion, consider that any overages or underage of the cost of these items in the first two areas could be from that $2.5 million?
Right, let's say of the above items, if there's only 2.4 left, then that moves down. It's because it is as funds available. Everything above the list has the priority, second priority is below the list with remaining funds.
I would support that.
Mr. Freitas, may I make a suggestion? Because I need a
Yes,
little
Dr.
bit of
Washington.
clarification here. If you could look at the synthesis page, and
That's my favorite page.
I got that. Look at Mr. Heverly's page.
Yes.
If the remaining dollars, the 2.5 million, if you were to draw another line above where it says facilities projects, so you've got the CTE, the STEAM, and instructional materials. Then draw a line, so then anything below that line, we could consider for the 2.5 million as needed or as appropriate. That way, because what I did is I cut this way down from your discussion in order to make it fit within 14 million. And then on the staff recommendation, those items you'll notice, except the ones that we think are more fixed costs, are cut down even further to accommodate for the 2.5 that we recommended for M&O. So there is a difference in some of those. For example, the carpeting replacement. So there are some differences in those dollars. So if you were to give us flexibility on facility projects and the other items with the 2.5 million, I think from my perspective, that might help us a little bit, not only with if something goes over, but also to increase some of these, maybe put more in the asphalt or do more projects in carpeting. Does that make sense?
It does. Also, I guess what would make sense would be defeating this motion and approving the M&O transfer, which I believe I heard some interest by members of the board. So I think that would be yet another option.
I missed that.
I did too. Could you explain that more thoroughly? I'm sorry.
Well, we had the board discussion, is my understanding, and we had public discussion, and there was interest, I believe, from different board members in actually transferring M&O and buying the property with the 2.5 million. So we could defeat this motion and then call that, entertain the motion for that, and forward, and have a vote on that.
Have a vote on purchasing the property.
Property with the 2.5.
Not necessarily.
But that hasn't happened yet.
Not necessarily.
And we do have another motion, and we have another motion in front of us presently. So we can continue to make amendments to this motion and clarification to this one, or we call for the vote to this one, and so we see where we're at. So we have a motion in front of us right now, which is to spend the 2.5 million in facilities projects.
No, I'm sorry, I think it was the items below the line.
Below the line as.
Musical instruments, classroom supplies.
On which document?
It was the staff.
Okay, below the line on staff
So
recommendations.
it's shade structures, carpet replacement, asphalt repair and sealing, roofing, steam, classroom supplies, materials, equipment, and musical instruments. As needed. Yes. Mr. Wall.
Could I request a friendly amendment because of what Dr. Washer shared with us here is I think we're trying to accomplish the things we talked about first. I go back to the same document that Mr. Hebert does.
That's what I want to go to.
In that, to me, that synthesized indeed what we wanted at the time. We've gotten a little bit off of that, but I'd like to ask for a friendly amendment so that there could be an additional line, like Dr. Washer said, with the flexibility so that we could take care of these things below the line and increase facility projects as needed so that we can get more done than we originally could with that amount. Is that right, Mr. Hebert? You see it?
Are you saying that the line that Dr. Washer is talking about, that would go between instructional supplies and facilities, that line, that we would use the numbers that are on the synthesis page above the line, and then if there's money left over below the line?
There would not be money left over if you use numbers that are on here.
Talking about the $2.5 million.
Correct. My suggestion would be.
2.5 is within those.
Correct.
Right, yes, that's what, yeah.
So if you wanted to also do other things that were on the staff recommendation below the line, you could include the facilities projects and the other items.
Include those in there so that that flexibility could address these as well.
That's right.
I will definitely go with that friendly amendment.
Okay, I have a question. Are we talking as?
Yes, Mr. Knopf.
Thank you, Mr. As funds are available, are we talking below that line of these items?
Yeah,
I know I'm on both pages, but you wanted to include that. Is that the motion?
Mr. Womack's friendly amendment is for the synthesis page and the line in which Dr. Washer was talking about.
Which then addresses more flexibility.
More
but also
flexibility
will address
below the line.
The recommendation.
And I'm okay with that, yes.
Yes, and I understand some of the items below are duplicates
Yes,
from the
they
top.
Yes, they
Okay, yes, like three of them, which I totally agree with Mr. Herbert, with the needs for students, and I agree with that. The other ones are repair, and of course, also, we have to maintain our facilities. Like I asked Mr. Hearns the last time, what happens if we need to repair a facility? We're gonna get the money somewhere. And I know it's not a one-time money that you're gonna use, because that's already allocated to other areas.
We do have.
Excuse me, but having the roofing and starts leaking and all, what are we gonna do?
We do have Fund 40, which is there for emergency repair.
Yes.
And that's where we do have dollars available for emergency repairs.
that's why I still think that, one-time monies to me is the relocation of that, M&O and leave the big space available there. How many acres are there in that M&O, right now, Lodi High?
We're estimating around 7 to 10 acres.
10 acres. That's a pretty good chunk of, real estate to do some things for Lodi High School there.
Mr.
So let me
Womack?
understand, Mr. Freitas.
Yes.
Let me understand this motion.
Well, that was, I was just gonna ask for, I was gonna respectfully ask Mr. Womack to clarify his amendment, because.
Well, my amendment is to Mr. Hubel's motion. And his
Right.
motion was to basically look at the original synthesis of the board meeting and approve that, because that's where the money is all. And it sums up what we talked about in the meeting. What came back to us was to also address the M&O relocation. So the board's looking at whether that money is going to be spent to buy this property for the future, or roll that money into taking care of the facility projects. My amendment would be to add the items under as funds are available in the recommendation as part of that, as another line there, so that staff could include those monies in all of those areas as needed. That would, to me, that would eliminate the M&O as part of the motion.
Okay, maybe, so going back to the census page, we've already approved many of these items. Is that correct, Mr. Womack?
The first three.
First three.
The CTE, STEAM, and instructional supplies?
The numbers are a little bit different. The
On
numbers are
the staff recommendation page, that's the,
No, there's only two on the staff recommendation page.
I'm
And we approved
I'm
those.
sorry, you're correct.
And we approved those two items.
Yes.
You approved three.
Mr. Freitas.
Clear as mud.
Well, what we're talking about here is on the staff recommendation page, the 2.5 million that is lined up for M&O is actually in a page above the line in the synthesis board.
Yes, it is.
And so, and the materials that are shown on the staff recommendation page below the line are really those items that are in the synthesis page.
Yes.
Am I not correct?
Yes.
Thank
How
you.
about with, if the board would be okay with us taking the 2.5 million and spending it on anything on the list other than the M&O move?
That would satisfy me.
That would satisfy me. That would satisfy me.
That would make it easier, I think.
Could the other four argue it?
The other board members have to say so too.
Yes.
What you're suggesting is what Mr. Womack was amending to, and Mr. Everly was agreeing to, would be that the 2.5 million is spent on anything but transferring M&O.
I included any on the list, not just the facilities projects.
And that list being,
No M&O.
Anything except M&O.
Thank you.
Call for the question.
I don't know if we even have an amendment.
That's not a
So-
motion.
So, Mr. Womack, do you agree that that is what your amendment is? Okay. And Mr. Everly, you agree to that friendly amendment?
Yes, I do.
Is there a second to Mr. Womack's amendment?
Second.
So, Dr. Talkin, did you have a question?
No.
Question was withdrawn. So call for the vote. Student vote. Student approved. Student split vote. One approved, one opposed.
No.
Both ayes. Very good. So we have a voice vote.
Unless you're all logged in right now.
No. Call for the voice vote. All of the amendment as proposed by Mr. Womack, say aye. Aye. All opposed, nay. Motion, amendment passes 5-2.
Mr. Freitas, do we have
Did
public
you-
comment on motions before they're voted on?
We did.
Did you vote on the?
Not on the
You
motion.
voted, you didn't vote on the motion.
We voted on the amendment. So now we have the motion, Mr. Everly's motion, which has been seconded by Mr. Neely.
Call for the question.
Yes, Dr. Powell.
That's for a vote.
I knew that.
What was the motion?
The motion is that we spend the 2.5 million on everything essentially. And all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries 5-2.
Now we need another of these things.
Personnel matters.
Mr. Freitas, I move that we approve personnel matters.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Arnold. Second by Mr. Everly. Any discussion? There's no student vote?
I want to just mention one thing on personnel matters, okay?
Yes.
I saw 12 new substitutes signed up for the district, which is a plus. And out of those 12, we had some returning, which is, brings it up to 17, I think. There's 5 more. So we're making progress there. Is that right, Mr. McCullough? Very good.
Very good.
Thank you. That's all the comment I have on that.
All right, call for the vote. Will be a voice vote again. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. And the motion carries 7-0. Communications from student representatives. Anna. What's going on at Bear Creek?
Thank you, Mr. President and board members. At Bear Creek, we had our first blood drive on December 1st. We had 59 students and teachers donating, and this enabled us to meet the blood drive scholarship qualification. It went very well. We're really excited to have our second one and get more people out in April. On November 20th, we held our junior versus senior powder puff game, and the event was a very successful fundraising for student government. The seniors won, clinching a 2-year title, and everyone was really excited with class rivalry. In student government, we are working on the Winterfest rally coming up in January. This rally, teachers nominate court based off of academic success and participation, and the students will vote for the king and queen, and winners will be announced at the basketball game. We also recognize sports teams, and each class prepares and performs a dance during the rally. So it's really fun to get connected with the class and show off our sports teams and academics. We are also going through foundation to host a crab feed at the Moose Lodge on January 23rd. For performances, on December 11th, this Friday, we're having our senior versus staff volleyball game. It's being held in the big gym at 7 o'clock. It's really exciting. We've been practicing. And we have our play, Our Town, that has been performing last week, and this week is the last week on the 11th and 12th. Those are the last days, 7 o'clock in the BC Theater. There's also a free string performance concert with Chris and McAuliffe students, our middle school, and the Bear Creek students happening tonight, Bear Creek Theater. I would like to recognize a staff member and a student. Miss Janet Brister, she is our athletic secretary. And on November 19th, we all gathered in the gym full of students, and she walked in and she was just starstruck. Like, she started crying. She didn't know what to do. We gathered around her and told her how much we appreciated her. We had students talk about her, and she was really touched by this act of kindness that we put on for her. And I'd like to acknowledge Megan Kerwin. She's a senior at Bear Creek High School, and she's a very positive person. She decided to make this project called the Positive Poster Project, and she gathered a bunch of students to stand on the sidewalk of Trinity Parkway with encouraging signs such as "You're beautiful," "Confidence is key," "Share the love," and "You matter." We also invited McNair students to participate in this event so we could start working together to make a better community. We also had an article in the Stockton Record that showed off Megan's project. So we're really happy to send out positive messages out of Bear Creek and continue forward.
Good, thank you, Anna. Now, this Powder Puff game, did you play that?
I did.
And what position were you?
I'm defensive end.
That's what I would have guessed. So. Very, very good. And a lot of performances. And how many tackles did you make in defensive end? Well, and since there are no witnesses, I guess you could say that's about it. So, that's great. Well, thank you for updating.
Mr. Freitas, may I say a couple things here?
Of course.
And great things that you're doing with McNair. It's crucial that this relationship that you and McNair and Bear Creek have be resolved, because it's important. You know, we speak of victory with honor, you know, in CIF and so forth. And my gosh, it has to be that. It's unfortunate that some of these students have this idea to go over there and destroy some property in there. So I'm glad that you're having that type of thing going. And again, good things are happening at Bear Creek. Appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. Julia, please tell us about the fit.
Thank you, Mr. President and board members. Currently, we are having Spirit Week, including rally games at lunch. This allows our students to have school spirit and just have fun at lunch. Our counseling office is hosting a coat drive to help out our students and community. And our AVID classes are hosting a toy drive to give to kids that do not necessarily receive presents on Christmas. Our after-school program continues to grow, which helps many students with after-school tutoring when they're struggling in classes or receive extra help from a teacher. Today, we also had a computer programming for any student wanting to learn more about computer code, and we had about 100 students attend this. We also have a bass fishing team, which allows students to participate in even more extracurricular activities besides the ones just given on campus. And student government is planning spring fundraisers that the whole school can participate in and have fun with. The theater on Friday, or last Friday, put on The Den, which allowed students to share stories, poems, and monologues, and many students said that that was a good experience. Our upcoming events include a choir concert, which combined Lodi Middle School and Tokay this December 10th at St. John's Episcopal Church at 7 p.m., which is an awesome opportunity for the middle school and high school to get together.
Very good. Well, thank you very much, Julia.
Mr. Freitas, can I make a comment?
Please.
Julia, how are you doing in your wrestling? I read somewhere, and I know that, what is your record now?
6-0.
Well,
that's undefeated, isn't it?
Yes. That is very neat. Now, how many on your fishing team?
I actually do not know. It keeps being brought up in the announcement, so I'm assuming that it is.
That's interesting, because, you know, that's outdoor education. And it's great to have it, my gosh. I hope every school will have some outdoor education. Thanks, Julia.
Thank you, Mr. Knopf. I know you have a lot of homework, but we have a subject that I think is very important, and we'd like to have your input on talking about school start time. So if you wouldn't mind staying just a little bit, we really appreciate it. Thank you so much. Comments from the public. I have one card. Comments from the public. We have one card, and that's from Mr. John Goble. Welcome.
Good evening. Thank you for giving me an opportunity to address your board during public comment. My name is John Goble. I'm the parent of a current Tokay High School student and 2 future Tokay High School students. I'm here to speak to you on behalf of a group of parents at Tokay High School who have recently undertaken an effort to affect some basic improvements, playability improvements to the Tokay baseball diamond. As those efforts have come to conclusion, we have a desire to prepare accounting of the basic materials that have been required to date and request reimbursement. At your board's discretion, I'm here on behalf of those individuals to attempt to get some guidance as to where the best approach would be to pursue such a reimbursement for a very nominal cost, either at assigned staff or by placing on a future board agenda.
Thank you.
I don't know if there's any concrete feedback on that I could bring back to my people so we could begin our accounting and develop a plan. It's all very nominal.
We would have to refer you to staff. The board can't have a discussion because it's not on the agenda, so Mr. Hearn can get in touch with you or the appropriate staff member can.
Yeah,
to answer your
absolutely.
questions.
That's what I'm just trying to get, either a name or an agenda process, so we're taking the right steps and handling this appropriately moving forward.
I thought he was gonna pay it.
I got a check for you.
$5?
A little more dirt than that.
Thank you, Mr. Gold. Thank you. I'm sure you'll be well taken care of.
Okay.
Any other comments from the public? Comments from employee group representatives? Mr. Johnson, you're looking over your shoulder.
I'm just offering Miss Ladwig the opportunity to congratulate your ascension first. That's right. Girls before
Ascension.
Good evening, President Freitas, members of the board, and Superintendent Washer. I just want to thank you for this opportunity to address you, congratulate Mr. Freitas on his new position at the board and the new Vice President and Clerk. It was interesting today because this is your annual organizational meeting. I was thinking back on finishing my first term as president of the chapter of CSEA, and I was thinking back and I thought, it seems like it's been a long year. We've done a lot of things this year. 12 months, you can get a lot accomplished. So maybe fortunately or unfortunately, I'll be here for another year. I have a 2-year term, so you'll get to see me again. And I look forward to working with each of you in the coming year, and we'll get a lot more accomplished. Thank you very much.
Congratulations.
President Freitas, members of the board, congratulations on your new positions.
Thank you.
Just wanted to remind you, if you didn't get an opportunity to RSVP for the school board's dinner the first week in January, we would love to have you join us at Papa Pablo's for dinner. I sent all of you the invitation. You didn't get a hard copy sent. If you need a reminder email, I'll send it on to you. Also wanted to let you know that Lodi is extraordinarily proud and pleased next week to be hosting CTA President Eric Hines. CTA President Hines is the affiliate president for statewide CTA. He's going to be visiting Lodi, giving us an opportunity as a chapter to show off some of our members and the great programs that they're part of here in Lodi Unified. Visiting a few school sites. I talked with the principals and asked for permission to make those visits, and they've all responded in the affirmative. And so we're very fortunate to have that visit and look forward to showcasing some of the great programs that Lodi has to offer. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Comments from the board?
Mr. Freitas, I'm going to go ahead and get started with this, okay?
Please, Neely.
All right, first of all, I want to start off by congratulating you and Mr. Everly and Mr. Womack. I'm sorry. For those of you who don't know, the clerk is the one that has to sign all of this stuff. Mr. Womack and I attended the California State School Board Association meeting, California School Board Association in San Diego this weekend. It was an outstanding event. And again, the seminars there proved to be the real key attraction to that whole convention. The seminars are put on by people who are actually doing these things. We put on one year about technology in the classrooms over here in San Francisco. So let me tell you some of the things that I saw that we can't say it worked because it's working in other places. All right? These are some of the things that I keyed on. The first one was cities and school districts working together for the betterment of all students. That was an incredibly informative seminar, and a lot of things that we can work on to make that happen better. Actually, it was happening, I think, I can't remember the name of the city, but it was one something. So our model would be one MODA. What was it? Double. One double concept. Well, ours would be one MODA, right? I mean, because guess what? The same kids that go to all the sports programs and all that stuff for the city are the same kids that visit our classrooms on a daily basis. So there's a lot of things that we should be working together. Now, I know this is really important, but the city actually pays for their SROs and their crossing guards. I'm saying we should do that, but they do that. And also, the city has donated land not donated land, they lease land to the city, $1 a year to build schools on. Incredible setup. And then in turn, they have a joint use agreement where the district guarantees the city so many days per year of use of certain facilities. So it can be that's something that we should get busy on. The second thing I saw that really impressed me was about low performing schools and how some of these school districts are making significant improvements in their low performing schools. We had 3 groups on the board that were doing this. One had been doing it for 6 months, one had been doing it for 6 years, and the other had been doing it for 16 years. The one that had been doing it for 6 years took their graduation rate from lower than 50% to above 80%. So it can be done. These are schools that were much like ours. So we can make that happen. There's a lot of ways to make it. And one thing that they said is, you just don't accept any excuses. Don't accept that those schools and those kids can't learn because they can. And then they foster a culture of achievement in the schools. So we need to look at that, and I've got some contacts for us on that also. The other thing I went to was about a bond measure to pass. I won't talk about that right now. Another one was on family resource centers, and it's kind of what we've been talking about bringing all of these elements together to help our lower income families. And they have 2 great models. One model was by a nonprofit institute down in San Diego, who brought all this services together. Services from food to housing, counseling services, job, all kinds of things. All kinds of things brought together by one organization. And this organization would then put satellite offices out on the school campuses. And the schools gave them the satellite facilities for free. They didn't charge them for them. So I thought that was really novel. The other model is that the school district employed a person to do exactly that, to be that coordinator for all the services. And I thought that was a great model too. And the way they justified the cost was it took so much work off of the principals and off of the secretaries and all that usually have to administer that kind of thing at the sites. So they streamlined that. They did all kinds of health checks there, that kind of stuff. So it's really an impressive program. I have some contacts on that as well. The final one I mentioned earlier, and I'm really interested in talking about this with our LEA folks and Ms. Kowski about this professional development. There's some people out there who are doing some really incredible things with professional development, and they're making it much more useful. I still remember the times in my professional development when I stood in the library and held the red ribbon and recited a poem, and that was my professional development. This goes so much further than that. It incorporates technology, and it's a great thing, and I've got some resources for that as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Neely. Sounds like it was a great conference. Mr. Womack.
Continuing on the theme of CSBA conference, and I'll make this quick because I touched on some of it already, but part of what I attended, for example, was one on parent engagement, which is an issue that we certainly have issues with. And one of the organizations there presented the concept of a call-in town hall meeting. So when we talk about parents and families who can't make it to a physical location, perhaps with lights and call-ins and stuff like that, they still get the engagement from the people, even though they're not physically there. Another one is alternatives to suspensions. They mentioned that if you have a program that's called in-school suspension, Don't assume that it's doing what it's supposed to do, that you should have regular follow-ups on it, and you should make sure that people who are, quote, giving services to the children in there so they don't repeat the behavior, are actually doing the services so they don't repeat the behavior. So we probably want to take another look at that, update that pretty soon, and evaluate that a little bit more too. And I mentioned legal issues already, so I'll go on beyond that, although it also mentioned the reserve cap, which you mentioned, Mr. Hearn, which could have an effect on us. And there are some efforts right now by CSBA with some bills to try to change that. Lastly, there was talk about the unfunded costs that the state requires us to do, and continue to do that. And the latest example is the CAA SPP, which is the Student Assessment Performance. It costs about $200 per student to actually do it, and they fund $20 per student. So that's the kind of things that Mr. Neely touched on, is we have these unfunded mandates from the state. And so those are also a major continuing concern. And other than that, I hope everybody had a good Thanksgiving, because I did.
Thank you, Mr. Womack. Ms. Castle?
Just really quickly, Joe Nava, you were a wonderful president. Thank you. You truly were, and thank you for your service. And Julia and Anna, I have to tell you that some people in this room have heard me say this before. I'm the generation of women who, when I was your age, we were told, you run like a girl, and we made to play half-court basketball. And so, yeah. And so when I hear that Julia is not only wrestling, but so many, you've won every match. And Ann is out there duking it out on the football field. I just glory in the fact that you're athletes. It makes me so happy to know that your generation and lots of generations in between mine and yours have been able to do that. So good for you. And then I just want to tell everybody to have a lovely, peaceful holiday season. Some of you get lots of days off, which is great, but I hope everybody takes some time off, just rest and enjoy the lovely season.
Thanks, Mr. Nava.
Mr. Freitas, thank you. Congratulations to your position. I know it's in good hands. It's been before. You told me that you would be doing that. So thank you. Okay, now I want to mention Dr. Washer on your. You don't tell us too much on your superintendent's report. I'm not on your case or anything like that, but I'd like to hear about the support on low achieving schools, which you have programs going in Oakwood, Lawrence, Westwood, and Sutherland, and in the middle schools with a 180. I'll also like to talk about the STEM program that you attend, teachers attending training and so forth. We public doesn't hear that, so it's good to have. And we also have a 6-8 science committee which recommends directions for grades 6 through 8, and they attend the county training. So if you bring those and tell so the public can hear what is really going on, and I am getting more support for the low achieving schools. Again, congratulations, Mr. Heberly for VP, and Mr. Womack. You can borrow my pen. Okay. I want to wish everybody a happy holiday season. We won't see you till the new year, which is January. Yeah, no, the meeting. Ralph, we got to schedule it.
January 12th.
January 12th, yeah. So we have a great vacation here. Enjoy it. Enjoy the break and come back refreshed. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Allen. That's a quick one. Yes, Mr. Heberly, Vice President Heberly.
Yeah. In regards to what Mr. Nava had mentioned, I also wanted to mention that we got a notification from you that, some of the things that we're doing, he alluded to the, but what I wanted to kind of highlight, I guess, is the STEM committee, or the science committee committee. And again, it's 6-8. And I would like to emphasize that the reason 6 is included is because of the articulation between 6th and 7th. Well, it doesn't stop at 8th grade. So I want to publicly voice my support so that that committee of experts in their field, it becomes a 6-12 committee. Because articulation is one of those things that is repeated in our LCAP. And so, sure, if there is a conference that is just for 9-12, or one that's for 7-8, a portion of that committee could go to that. But still, there's that continuity and flow and articulation from 6 to 12. So I really firmly believe that that committee needs to be expanded to high school level also. And if you could keep me updated on that, if that is a direction we're going to go.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Everett. I would like to thank the board for their faith and confidence in selecting me. I know the real matter is that no one wanted to follow Joe. What an amazing job that he did, and what a bar that he set for standard. 50 years, geez. Someday I'll live to be that old. So, but that is absolutely no. Your grace under pressure and your leadership is quite unappreciated and very much very, very outstanding. Great job, and those were you left very big shoes to fill, and I'm very excited for the opportunity to do that. I also like to thank my officers, Mr. Everly for being Vice President, Ms. Womack for being clerk. I'm going to rely upon you greatly, as also for the volunteers, for the community members. I am very excited about this year and the opportunities that we have in front of us. As we have in many years, there's so many different opportunities that we can do whatever we can do best. And the one thing that we're just going to do is give the best opportunity to our kids. So I'm very excited about that and continuing that tradition and being asked to lead us in that direction. So working with the faith of all our parents, our students, our employee groups, and staff, I look forward to the challenges in that. To make a comment and recognize some individuals, Principal Maldonado, Lodi, for the amazing job under pressure for out of the blue bomb threat that we had at Larson Elementary School. Larson was the subject of a bomb threat along with Walmart's. Staff worked late. Mitch was there. Lodi Police Department, they went through the school not once, not twice, but 3 different times, reassuring everyone there. They called an overwhelming public social media policy that went through there. And the next day, attendance was down, but not the way we thought it would be down. But every single one of our teachers and every single one of our employees showed up. And that says something really amazing about the people we have and the great job that they're doing. So I'd like to commend Lodi and Maldonado and everybody for an outstanding job. Grace under pressure and doing a great job. Also, I'd like to wish everyone a very happy and safe holiday season. So, with that, returning back to the agenda, would the board have any objection to moving the board resolution down and so our students can get out of here and taking up the high school start time, the report item on that? No objection. All right. So, we have update on the changing of the high school start schedule. Dr. Washer.
Thank you, Mr. Freitas, members of the board. This is the same item that was on the agenda at a previous meeting, got moved to this agenda item. So we are bringing it to you to get your feedback, your comments on if you would like to continue looking at this issue or what the wishes of the board is. This is not an action item at this point. I'm just sharing with you what we've done thus far. You just go through Just the background of how this came about. There was a presentation made to the board by a community member in relation to some research that had been done that generated some interest in this issue. I can go to the next. Thank you. We've given you or presented some options to consider. One being change the daily schedule for high schools only, leaving all other schools in place as they are currently, or very similar to that. This would necessitate an expansion of the transportation department, and there was a separate document attached to this that shows what those costs would be and what all that entails. The other option would be to change the daily schedule for all schools. This would mean that everybody would get shifted to a later time and a later release time. And we have a couple samples there for you attached. If school started at 8 or if school started at 8:30 to show you what it would look like. Another option would be to add a 7th period to the current schedule in place at the high schools, giving some options for students. So in other words, they could come early, 1st period through 6th period, or they could start later, 2nd period through 7th, or if they so choose, take the whole 1st through 7th and take additional classes, whether it be electives or other classes that they couldn't fit into their schedule before. Knowing with what master schedules that not everything would be offered in that 1st and 7th, there may be some limitations, but at least it would give some options for students on when they would start and end school. In that situation, we would keep the current transportation schedule, so the busing would run for that early period, not for the later start. We would need additional staffing to make that work for the extra period. We're estimating 2 to 4 FTE per high school to make that a go. And then the other option would be to keep the current schedules as they are and perhaps think of other ways to promote health and well-being for students, especially in the area of getting enough sleep. So those are the options we've been looking at. So to this date, we've gotten some input. We've done a staff survey, initial staff survey, I should say. We've done a student survey. We will then, if the board continues to be interested in this topic, move on to parent input. And that would look like community forums, perhaps at each high school area, maybe the call-in model that was shared earlier, some way to provide as many avenues as possible for parents to give input, and also really to hear about the topic. This would not be something, I don't think, that would be conducive to the phone type survey or to the quick, yes, no kind of thing that we were able to do with staff and students. Because parents will definitely have questions and other issues come up that we would want to have a face-to-face conversation if they so choose. So to have those opportunities. And then do a survey after forums are done to get their official input. So we've given you some issues to consider, things that have come up that may need to be looked at if any change is going to be made or if any change is not going to be made. So just some issues that arise when you talk about the subject. After school activities, whether it's tutoring, the after school programs, athletics, all those things that happen after school, instructional time that students may miss for away games, nutrition services, we need to take a look at that. How would that impact things like breakfast, lunch, and dinner? There were some issues that may come up about traffic on some of these options, especially moving everybody or if high schools move later and their feeder schools also started a little later, what would that do to traffic around the area? We need to take a look at adult school schedules, any type of impact that any of these options would have on students, parents, and staff. And some of the student responses gave you a little glimpse into what some of those might be. And then we need to look at what impact any of those options would have on the district budget. So no matter what option you're looking at or what choice we're looking at, those things would need to be considered.
Very good. Thank you, Dr. Washer.
Just wait for your feedback.
Mr. Freitas.
Yes, Mr.
I think if we're going to proceed with this idea of the scheduling change, we should get some parental forums and then cover all bases in that regard, because I know we had staff already and then we had student surveys. And I know all along that the starting times are actually early, 7:20 as it is now. And of course, there's a possibility of having the 8 or 8:30 times or the other options, so maybe the parents can give us some input. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Knopf. Other board comment? Yes, Ms. Gasko.
I would just like to I would love to hear from Anna and Julia, since you're in the trenches, so to speak, how, if this were to happen, how would it affect you?
I see a lot of pros and cons with this. At the same time, I believe it is necessary for students to get more sleep, and I think it could help the tardy problem. But as school starts at 7:20, also teaches students that they are required to be on a schedule, and changing it back shows that, oh, it's okay, we'll let you be late sometimes. And at the same time, I think it causes more problems for athletes, because the later you are in school, the later practice runs, and the later you come home at night, and you're still getting the less amount of sleep. And because of away games, athletes will miss a lot more school, because they'll have to leave earlier and they'll have to make up more work because of the later start times, because other schools don't start as late as well. So I think those are two things that are important.
Very nice. Thank you, Julia.
I agree with everything Julia said, and when I brought this to my student government class, and when you guys sent out the survey, we really promoted it, and we basically came to the conclusion we want it to stay the same for these reasons. So it's pretty much exactly what we came up with. And also we have a lot of athletes on the Bear Creek campus, and they just recently started this year that you have to go to 2 out of the 3 tutorial days. If you have a C in any of your classes, they're really strict on it. So if we were to get out of school later, we would have to start practice around maybe 4:35, and then practice is 2 to 3 hours depending on the sport, and then go home and do all the homework and other extracurricular activities. Pretty much everything would just shift a couple hours forward, and I don't see how it could help at all.
Very good. Thank you.
If I may comment.
Yes.
Also, starting later school start times, how Anna was saying about the other out of school extracurricular activities, that wouldn't change times, and because of getting out later, you would have less time in between those extracurricular activities, and so your schedule would probably be even more impacted because of it.
Yeah, and also I would agree with the 7 periods though. That way it gives students the option, and I think that's fair.
Good. All right. Thank you.
As a follow-up to that, when you mentioned the 7th period, whether you, as a student, choose 1 through 6 or 2 through 7, do you see that as any kind of a middle ground in this, or because it does give the students choice? And I know you as a swimmer, you get up early when you're doing 2 things. I just want to know if that would be something that you could see as a benefit, is having a 7th period.
I see it either way. Are you talking about utilizing all 7 or just going 2 through 7?
Well, as a student, you could choose 2 through 7 or 1 through 6.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess as a third option, it would be the 1 through 7, of course. And that would be only if you wanted that 7th period class.
Actually, yeah, now that I think about it, because for athletes, you couldn't tell them you have to take 1 through 6 if you want to, so start times for practices would obviously have to be after 7th period. So now I see that, but yeah.
See, and that's kind of where, the 7th period has advantages, but then it holds back practice, which, this time of year, it's dark.
Yes.
So, okay, just curious.
Thank you, Mr. Eppley. Ms. Mealy?
No. Could you go back to page 6?
2, that's 3. That's 1. There we go, that's it. This is what it's all about right here. This is what everything boils down to. It's not about, you know, I mean, we can make it work. We're getting some advice from some really good folks that it's better for our kids. And if we truly want to do what's best for our kids, then we'll follow this. I don't place a lot of weight on our survey methods because they are very unscientific. But the students voted 58% in favor of change, and about 40, a little over, almost 42% opposed the change. So that's kind of interesting, but I don't put a lot of weight on that because I also read some of the comments, and one of them that I particularly liked said, "I like food." I have no idea what that had to do with anything. And also responding was only about 1,600 kids. And we have more than that at each one of the high schools. So we didn't get a lot of good feedback on that. Staff was about 60-40. If you add the 2 questions about what, yes, I would like to change, but only if it didn't affect the middle school and grade school. So, you know, we can survey everybody. And so I had a conversation with Mr. Womack on this. And I'm not going to tell him your position on it. I'll let you do that. But that's the only person I talked about, so we can do that. And he says, you know what, George, no matter what, you're going to make somebody mad, right? If you change it, you're going to make somebody mad. And if you don't change it, and it's going to be probably about the same percentage, you know? So, again, then we've got to fall back on what's best for the kids, right? So, you know, I think that's what we've got to follow. As far as the different alternatives, well, we've got to work that out. One alternative would just be to move everything by 40 minutes. Everybody's by 40 minutes. That might work. The 7th period, that's kind of an interesting concept. But I say, my view on this is we move forward on trying to get closer to that. And I think anything we do will be helpful.
Thank you, Sue. Dr. Washer?
Yes.
If we wanted to implement this for the 2016-2017 year, when would a decision have to be made?
President Freitas, members of the board, I think the main challenge, if the board wanted to move the time of high school only, would be the issue of buses. We would need to purchase buses and hire and train drivers. Mr. Hearn can certainly give you details on that, but neither one of those are easy tasks. So I think that would be a challenge that we would need to figure out. I don't know if that would be possible for next year, given the timeline now or not.
Well, that would be staff's challenge because we would just set a minimum start time, say a policy that no high school start before 8:30 or thereabouts, and then you would get that all the time.
Mm-hmm. Mr. President.
Yes, Mr. Womack.
Yes, Mr. Neely and I did have a conversation. We didn't necessarily agree on everything, but we had a good conversation. We did agree on what you decide. Somebody's not going to like it. That comes with the territory. But we have to make decisions, and that's part of the job. I've listened very, very closely, and Mr. Keithley, I have to give you credit because you accomplished bringing something that was not even on our radar to being a board priority all of a sudden. And we have LCAP, we have study sessions, we had all this stuff, and at no time at all did this come up as a high important issue. But you have a right to come up here, and you were very eloquent. You also brought a lot of documentation with you, and I appreciate that, I really do. I see our job as one of listening. And at some point in time, though, we listen, we collate all that information, and then we have to come up with a decision. And so, at fear of making you upset, sir, I don't agree with this change, and I'll tell you why. I'll make my point. I agree that kids need more sleep. I don't think changing the hours is going to do that. The idea is more sleep. If you have a child who is chronically late to school or can't get out of bed or whatever, you give them another 40 minutes, they're just going to be 40 minutes late again, I believe. I don't know what students think about that. There's certain categories where it's not going to necessarily accomplish what we want. And if that's the case, then we have to ask ourselves, do we want to go through all the, not so much the cost, but the upset of everybody else whose schedule depends on being earlier, whether it's an athlete or a parent who has to drop kids at more than one school, or a lot of these things, a lot of the fact that we've heard. Part two, the feedback that I see here was not overwhelming one way or the other, and I agree with Mr. Neely. I can't put a lot of weight on it necessarily with some of the comments I read. Why do you guys hate us? Is one of the comments. Well, good question, I guess. So if the goal is to get more rest, I just don't seem to think this is it. And I'm going to use my last point is that, and I want to, Mr. Novel will appreciate this. It's going to be a sports-related analogy. Football. The guy goes out for a pass, makes a diving catch, and the ref on the field says it's a catch. The red flag comes out, and they say, we want to make sure that was really a catch. And they review it. And you watch this guy go back and forth on the video to see if the ball hit the ground first. And at some point in time, they have to make a decision to either overturn it or leave it like it is. And the criteria they use, it has to be overwhelming evidence that it was indeed not what was called by the referee. I don't think anything here is overwhelming whatsoever for us to overturn our current schedule. And so that's my point, and I would vote against doing this. Matter of fact, I take it to the point where I don't think we should spend any more time on this. Period.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Womack. Any comments on the board?
Go ahead.
Okay, I asked Mr. Hearn, just going back to say we go with the high school only late start, how would we afford the buses?
It would have to come out of general fund LCFF sources. There's no increase in transportation if we increase transportation from the state.
And what that means is that since we have our 3-year plan, that something else we'd have to forego.
Absolutely, we would have to forego the same dollar amount in the LCAP.
Okay, thank you.
Very good. Dr. Talkin?
I would echo Mr. Womack's comments. The only thing that I would consider personally might be the 7th period, not for a 7-period day for students, but a choice for students who were not involved in activities after school. They go 1 or 2 through 7 if they so choose. If they're involved in activities after school, they have to go 1 through 6 because you can't get all of the activities in. It does get dark at this time of the year at 5 o'clock. Having a 7-period day and not giving 7 periods to students does not require additional staff. I can assure you that. Busing may be another story that I can't address, but I'm certainly in favor of leaving it as is unless we can do a 7-period day on that basis. And then, of course, the high school principals would be very unhappy with trying to make that schedule work because they would have to ask students who wants to take periods 2 through 7 as opposed to 1 through 6 and put in the schedule today. Some of them that have long hair would have to pull it out, but those that don't would be okay.
Very good. Thank you, Dr. Talkin. All right, comments from the public.
That was the first one.
Why don't we go to public comments and we'll come back to the board.
Okay.
Public comments.
I think we have to remember that there's probably a number of us, including myself, that went and sitting at the board right now, that we did not start at high school at 7:20 in the morning. The high schools here in Lodi, before Bear Creek and McNair were built, at least into the 70s, started at 8:15. You have high schools. Right now you have the CDC, one of the most reputable groups in the nation, saying that kids aren't getting enough sleep. Remember this, you can say that, well, if I go to bed at 9 o'clock and I get up at 6, or I go to bed o'clock at 10 up at 7, which one's easier to wake up for teenagers? The later time for most teenagers. It's the sun's coming up, it's easier to wake up. You gotta look at too, I understand the high school, the athletes, but we're surrounded by other high schools that start later in ours. In fact, out of the 84 high schools in our Sac Joaquin section, only 7 start at 7:20 or earlier, only 7. The median start time for 84 schools is 7:54 a.m. So obviously, 42 of those high schools, after at 7:55 a.m. and later, all those kids do athletes, all those kids have after-school sports, all those kids have responsibilities later. They could have jobs. The school science that's 7:20 right now here was never put in place because of sports or teachers. It was put in place because there was an overcrowding problem in Lodi and Tokay high schools, and they had to go to multiple days to fit that in. And then eventually, once Bear Creek was built, they could go back to one session class, one session during the day, and they chose, why they chose 7:20, I have no idea, but they chose 7:20. So to say that there's not a reason not to do it because there's no real, you can't see any difference, the CDC is paramount saying there is. And if you look at the research, it goes back 25 years. It's been going on for 25 years in this country. And in fact, majority of developing countries, Japan, Germany, England, start at 8 o'clock or later. So it can be done. Athletes make it happen. Students make it happen. And as far as chronic late students, sure, that's not the reason for doing this. It's not for them. It's for the rest of the students. The fact that they'll get more rest, they'll be able to come later. You had an incident, talking about later darkness, you had an incident out at McNair. Girl almost got kidnapped, and she was leaving her house at 6:30 in the morning. And was almost, you could hear the screams on a surveillance video of his house nearby. You could hear the screams from this girl that got away, but it's 6:30 in the morning, pitch dark, walking to school. So, you know, to continue to say that 7:20 is the best time for our students, there's no science to back that up. Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Everly.
Whatever you guys decide, the one thing that I think you can't do high school in isolation, and I taught high school for a long time, and not all families are the same, but some of them need the older children to pick up their siblings from school. It was very common at Tokay for the students to go over and pick up their siblings and sometimes do the babysitting. So whatever you decide, you probably need to look at what the impact that would be on some of the elementary families. Thank you.
Thank you. Additional public comment? Mr. Johnson?
We saw you move.
The only two things that come to mind on this for me, one is that as a former athletic director at Tokay, we had 1M, we had 6 teams, and if I'm giving 2-hour practice blocks to each team, then that means, and typically, unfortunately, the reality was the freshmen got the lowest priority. Varsity got the June 1st. Let's just be real at how that works, right, Mr. Nava?
Yes, sir.
So that meant that our freshmen were practicing under the schedule we have now until 6 o'clock, from 6 to 8. And if you push back that time, then those kids, typically the lowest ones in the totem pole, are going to get the last time slots, which is going to push them back now later in the evening. May not be relevant to the discussion because obviously the Tokyo Athletic Department has significantly less stature than the CDC. The other issue that you might want to consider is subs are at a premium right now. We've got teachers that can't go to an all-day training hosted by our own district because they get called back to their school sites because we don't have enough subs. Now we're talking about having to have teachers or coaches released to go travel with their team. We might also be short subs there too. And getting a sub for an hour or two from 2 to 3 in the afternoon is a heck of a lot harder than getting a sub who's willing to work from 7 or 8, whatever your start time is, work a full day, is my point. So there's some other logistic issues that weren't up there that you need to consider.
Good, thank you, Mr. Principal Sandstrom? Never a loss for words.
Cal, really?
President Freitas, you are very persuasive in your new position. Wow, calling people out. I like that. Mr. Novel is much kinder. But no, thank you, Mr. Freitas. As our student said, I think a lot of pros and cons. When you start looking at start times at the high school and everything else, later times, great. I believe that some students would take advantage and sleep in more. I think some students could take advantage of flex schedule and say, hey, I can take more classes. I think as soon as you start saying, hey, they are going to get more sleep, and I understand Dr. Keithley's views on that, I don't know that that's really going to happen. Again, I don't see the statistics that say students do sleep more. Schools might start later, but I don't think I see anything that says the students are getting more hours of sleep. I think the students who are going to classes later and then going to practice later, activities later, are now going to have to study later, and so they might be getting up later. I do understand that, hey, maybe there's some scientific stuff involved with light, and when you're waking up to light as opposed to waking up in the darkness, that may have different physiological effects and things like that. So I see some benefits there. I think the logistics of it, Dr. Talkin, I would tell you, from everything I've run and everything else, I disagree that going to a 7th period day even and making it a consistent 7th period day will require more staffing, just because those 0 periods or 7th period classes will require, they'll probably have smaller enrollment overall, so you're going to need some flexibility. It's not going to be staffed at 31-to-1 or something like that. Some classes might only have 25 kids in them, and that's going to impact staffing as a whole and everything else. So there will be additional costs and things like that. If anything were to be done at the high school level anyway, I would say start at the same time we're starting, but give that option of going to that 7th period day and finding a way that students could flex it. If students want to start 2nd period and everything else, that's fine. One of the big things when it involves athletics, the numbers that Dr. Keithley gave are fairly accurate as far as start times of our other schools in our area and in our section. Most of those other schools, though, also have either 6th period PE or athletic PE. Lodi Unified does not give PE credit for athletes. So when they're in their athletics, they're not getting PE credit. They still have to fit PE into their schedule and things like that. So other schools have flexibility within that we don't currently have. Doesn't mean we couldn't change that, but that's what I said. The logistics of it all are pretty significant, and personally, I don't think it's something that could fit into the start of next school year. You will drive every high school, not just the principals, but the APs who have to do the master scheduling. To get this in place by next August would be monumental.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Freitas.
Mr. Hunt? Mr. Nava's in a hurry, you have to move a little quicker.
Congratulations, Mr. Freitas.
Thank you, Mr. Hunt.
And the rest of you in your spots. As a counselor, I know we've already started with our feeder schools. We have appointments and we're getting together with them and we're setting those up at the start of February. We've got lists that course selection sheets that are being printed up with all the courses and so forth. So I'd just like to echo with what Mr. Sandstrom said. Next year's schedule is already in the process of being developed and we're coordinating all those efforts and we're kind of on our way. We have less than 10 more days left in this semester. When we come back in January, we're already kind of starting those conversations. So just wanted to let you know, timeline wise, it's going to be really tight for implementing next year. Thank you.
Thank you. Well,
Mr. Freitas, can I say a couple words, please?
Yes.
Just by my experiences in Stockton Unified. 25 years at Stagg High School. Several times the suggestions were to start late. I was athletic director and I had 600 athletes that participate at that school, which was about 1/3 of the population that we had. And it was very difficult. We always talk about starting. We start there at 7:20. Teachers arrive at 7:15, and the classes start at 7:20, and then they can leave at 2:10. And our practices actually started at 3 o'clock because you have some type of intervention with some of the athletes that you have, and that time, we had good times. Again, it's telling you that those youngsters will get more sleep. I don't know. My daughter has 3 grandchildren, and they do enforce the rules, but I know that other people don't. They'll take that little phone or iPad there and they stay awake till midnight, texting everybody else. That's my experience from her telling me this, okay? And
they're not texting you?
No, I'm gone. But I think I'm at the gym at 12.
Yes.
But anyway, it's very difficult. The change is difficult, and I know that it's going to be a tough decision for me to decide. I know the American Academy of Pediatrics recommends that and all that kind of stuff, and I don't know.
Thank you. Mr. Neely, one last, how about this? Can you go after me? Can we put up the document that says current start times, please? No, it was in the list. Going back to the agenda item.
Yeah, it's 4th from the bottom.
We don't have the attachment?
Yeah.
Yeah, the current start and dismissal.
Current start dismissal times.
I have it right here.
And it seems from our own document that what we're really talking about is our high school start times. That if we enlarge that, we look at that, we're looking at 7:20 for high schools, and then 9:15 for middle, which interestingly enough is our highest performing high school. So I'm sure the two are related, but it does seem that only one of our schools starts before 8 o'clock. Otherwise, I believe that's Elkhorn and their gate program, but that's very close. I think it's 7:50 or thereabout. Sorry, what? Mr.
For the middle college, they could be taking college courses prior to that start.
So, and I do respect the comment, and I think the American Pediatrics is very, very persuasive, but I don't know if we have to go that far with the 8:30 start time. It seems very disruptive, but this could be something that maybe the board could solve with a minimum start time of say 8 o'clock, and with the details to be determined by staff. And money's a problem. Fortunately, we have 2.5 million that's laying around.
That's fine.
It's a And, but the other thing is, I also agree with comments of the board. We can pull this thing to death. I have yet to contact one parent that isn't in favor of a later high school start time. And we also have a process for implementing board policies, which involves report items, debate, and public forum. So I'm ready to act on this in the near future, and I'd like to see it implemented if we're going to do something by August. So that's my 2 cents. Mr. Neely? For the 2016, 2017. Sure. Thank you, Mr. President. And the other thing also, I'm sorry, I apologize, is that many of our students will still be getting there earlier. Our swimmers would still be at the pool early, and we'd still be started early in a lot of different ways. But I never, when I was a parent and my daughters were going to Tokay, 7 to 8 made absolutely no sense to me, and it still doesn't make any sense. So, and I waited for strong opposition from somebody, and I've yet to hear it. So I think we have to follow the sound medical advice and do something about these times. So, Mr. Neely. Yeah.
All right. Change is always difficult, and this is going to be the same way. But Ralph, you talked about clear and convincing evidence. I mean, you got the CDC and you got the American Academy of Pediatrics both saying it. So I don't know what more you could ask for as far as clear and convincing evidence. I don't know what else.
I'm agreeing with you that they need more sleep. I'm just saying that changing the hours is not going to accomplish that.
Yeah, I think it might in some cases. I don't know, maybe quite a few cases. And maybe the old starfish thing, they did it. We can help one. The other question I've got, Mr. Hurt, how much would it cost if we just moved everything back 40 minutes, everything?
As far as transportation, if we move everything, then there's no additional.
There's no additional cost, right?
That's correct, Mr. Neely.
I mean, is that something we move back 40 minutes so the high school started at 8 and everybody else starts proportionally later?
That is one of the options that was up there for consideration. I think we would need to get some feedback from our middle schools and elementary schools on what that would do, their opinions on that. I think that we do have some schools that right now are starting fairly late and moving them later, then you're going to have young children getting out pretty late. So we would need to look at that. I don't think, we've got some middle schools that start at 9 o'clock, so moving them 40 minutes, makes them 9:40. What time are they getting out then? So those are the kinds of things that I think you would hear us.
Well, here's the thing. Here's my final point, and I'll be quiet. Guys, it's being done. Okay? Other places are doing it, and it's working fine. So if they can do it, by God, we can do it. We can make this happen. And if it's good for the kids, like CDC and the AAP say, then there's no reason why we shouldn't. That's my final word.
How much cross interaction do we have with high school students with younger students on busing? Does that happen a lot?
I'm sorry, I'm not sure I understand the question.
They are combined routes. They are combined routes, yes.
How many students use our buses?
It's not a high number.
Not a high percentage.
Because when we changed to the hub system, most students that live in town are within the walking distance, so they're not bused. So the majority of our busing is for those that live farther away, and of course, special education, which was
even for high school because you get driver's license.
So Dr. Washer, my understanding is if we do nothing tonight, you're going to continue on with the parent polling that you discussed earlier, and this would continue on as a report item.
If the board wants us to keep looking into this, we will. I'm hoping to get some direction from the board to want us to keep looking at this, because of course you're not going to make a decision tonight, or do you want us to stop at this point?
Okay. So Dr. Bill. Yes, Mr. Everly.
Back on the, excuse me, back on the seventh period, as one of the options, so that they can either start first period or second period. How does that affect busing costs?
Mr. Hebley, members of the board, our suggestion with that one would be keep the busing as is. So the busing will run the 1st through 6th schedule. And if students chose a 2nd through 7th schedule, there would not be busing.
No additional costs, that answers my question, thank you.
In transportation.
In transportation.
So, yes, Ms. Castle.
Okay, just my thoughts. I can see both sides to this. I'm very uncomfortable with the huge group that's been left out of the process so far as the parents. So I think that we need to we need to be aware that we have not provided input from parents at all. I did hear, I'm always looking for a compromise, and Mr. Sandstrom mentioned that, and you just mentioned it too, Ron Everly, and that is if we added a 7th period, which I've always been in favor of anyway, then at least the high school students and their parents would have an option, but we would affect the sleep time of hopefully half the high school kids. But I'm not sure how you'd work out who would do 1st through 6th, who would do 10th through 7th. I'm not sure how we would do that equitably, and I don't know if it would be fair to say, well, we won't do busing for the later times. It's just a lot of unanswered questions. But at this time, I'm highly uncomfortable with I'm not going to say one way or the other because I don't believe that we've given the parents a fair shot at giving us any feedback from their perspectives. And there will be thousands of perspectives and situations that we would affect adversely or positively. We haven't heard from them.
Very good. So,
Mr. Castle, members of the board, I'm sorry, Mr. President Freitas. We have not gone to parents yet because we weren't sure if the board wanted us to pursue this, and that was a larger endeavor than touching base with staff or students. So that's the reason why we wanted to wait to hear what you had, what your thoughts are.
And I understand.
So is there a majority of the board that would like to direct staff to stop pursuing this investigation?
That was my comment again, so yes.
So there is one member of the board, you know, 2 members of the board that would like, 3 that would like to stop investigation.
Yeah.
So it appears like the majority of the board, however, would like you to continue.
Okay.
I would raise a question of, I understand the concept of surveying parents, but if we don't get any better results than we do from our own staff and teachers, it's pretty much worthless.
Mr. Neely, let me have just a couple of things on my experiences. That's a crisis. Starting time of schools, it's a changing time. No, let me finish. It's a crisis to parents. You get those parent forums, those jams or your rooms will be filled with parents because they are concerned about the starting times. And I almost guarantee that they will. So you should give them a shot.
Very good. All right, so.
Okay, we will do that, and we will bring you back more information.
Thank you. All right, our last matter of the evening is on proposed board policy revision.
President
Yes.
President Freitas, members of the board, I will be taking this item from Ms. Verica, who said she has laryngitis. We do have staff here in case you have specific questions about any of the policies. As is our process, we bring you policies as a report item, as kind of a first go to show you what we're looking at and revising, and then we will bring it back to you for action. So there's no action tonight. There is one item, though, that we would like to let you know that we did find some areas that need to be revised. That That is number 5145, parental notifications, the exhibit. We are going to make some additional changes to that. We found some inconsistencies in references. So just let you know that when we bring that back to you, there will be some changes on that one. Most of these have to do with new legislation, new requirements, kind of the cleanup language that we do from time to time. But we do have staff representing the different departments on these policies if you have any questions right now or things that you'd like us to bring back.
Thank you, Dr. Washer. Any comments from the board? Ms. Castle?
One quick question. Number 6146, that's the high school graduation. Did I see that correctly, that we would go from 4 years of English to 3?
That was the minimum requirement, so it wasn't.
Currently our requirement is 4, the state requirement is 3.
But what, we're going to have to revise that anyway because of the high school exit exam that came in late this year.
Okay. That makes sense. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Castle. Mr. Womack?
Yeah, one comment is, it's interesting because we have all these changes and they're never ending. They're never ending. Because down at CSBA, one of the seminars that I attended, we talked about the recent changes in the law. And last month, November, there was a change in 51-223, which isn't on here. It will be in the future, I'm sure, about meaningful instructional minutes. And so, and that would very clearly in the bill, it does not cannot count TA and study hall times as instructional, what have you. So again, just a point is that when they updates, we're going to be having these consistently. So what I do is I look at just the one that has the strikeouts, because then I can tell exactly what's been removed, and I don't really have any questions on English.
But if you do between now and the next meeting, please let us know so that we can get those addressed before we ask you to approve.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments from the board? Comments from the public? Thank you. So we look forward to seeing this as an action item in the very near future. Reports from board advisory committees. Seeing none. Future agenda items. All right. Everyone have a very safe and healthy holiday, and we look forward to seeing you next year. So. You know what he's saying.